Hey everyone, Wolf Lord Rho here. Before I begin today, a big thank you to Master Hoffman for the virtual gift voucher. Huge thank you my friend for the support, it is truly appreciated. Thank you. But on to today. Today we discuss the fabled Squat Empire, as we ask the question, could it ever make a return? General spoiler warning to begin, as we will be discussing events from across the Warhammer 40k lore, so you have been warned. But with that said, let's just jump straight in. Okay, the Squats. The 40k equivalent to the dwarfs of Warhammer Fantasy. And much like their fantasy equivalent, they once held a prominent place within the world of Warhammer 40k. However, that was in the earliest days of the grim dark universe. The one-time Squat Empire has since been all but erased from the lore, and the race themselves all but obliterated out of existence. So before we can answer if the Squat Empire will ever return, we need to know why it disappeared. And thankfully, we do seem to have an answer. Back in 2004, so we're going back some time now, the legendary Jervis Johnson answered some fans having a forum debate on the subject, and his words were very informative. At least it's believed to be him. I don't think it's ever been confirmed. So take it with a grain of salt here just in case. But like I said, the words were very informative either way. So let me read a couple of quotes for you to sum it up. The reason that the Squats were dropped was because the creatives in the studio felt that we had failed to do the dwarf archetype justice in its 40k incarnation. From the name of the race, Squats, what were we thinking? Through to the short bikers motif. We had managed to turn what was a proud and noble race in Warhammer, and the other literary forms that the archetype exists, into a joke race in 40k. We only fully realised what we had done when we were working on the second edition. Try as we might, we just couldn't work up much enthusiasm for the Squats. The mistake we made then, deeply regretted since, was to leave them in the background, and the Get You By Army List book that appeared. With hindsight, we should have dropped the Squats back then, and saved ourselves a lot of grief later on. Now this to me does make a lot of sense. I am a huge fan of the Dawi, the dwarfs of Warhammer Fantasy. They are by far and away one of my favourite factions, second only perhaps in the old world to my fair lady of Bretonia. But honestly, it is a close run thing. Long has my loyalty been swayed to the Dawi of the Western Holds, of Karak Norn and Karak Izor. Don't ask me why. The second I saw that map as a kid, I was drawn to the holds of the Grey Mountains. But for all my love of the dwarfs in the old world, to me, they never did feel right in the world of 40k. Even back then as a kid, there was just something not right about them. And obviously I know I'm in the minority with that, but that's just how I felt. So reading those words by believed to be Jervis Johnson, like I said, it does make a lot of sense. Take that quote, "We had managed to turn a proud and noble race into a joke in 40k. Now, I wouldn't say the Squats were a joke, but I do agree with the meaning. Compared to the legacy of the dwarfs in fantasy, it's undeniable the Squats just absolutely paled in comparison. Now, he does go on to say, in the end, and it took years to really get to the roots of the problem, this led to a realization that we were going to have to drop the Squats in their squat form from the 40k background. There was little point having a major race that we weren't willing to make an army book for, and their inclusion in the background meant that people kept asking us when we'd do a squat codex. Instead, we decided that we'd write the squats out of the background by saying their homeworlds had been devoured by a Tyranid hive fleet. So the doom of the squat empire within the lore was to be harvested by a nondescript Tyranid hive fleet. As a way to go, it's a pretty good one. It's a shame it wasn't fleshed out into a bigger storyline. But I guess when you're removing a faction because it just doesn't work, you don't really want to make a big deal about it. For me, I'm not sure it's a lack of development on the squats that cost them, because again, assuming these are the words of Jervis Johnson, they did try to get to grips with them, but they just couldn't be inspired or just simply make them work within the 40k universe. And that to me is the important point. The squats didn't work within the 40k universe. Not through the fault of the squats themselves, or of course the designers, although yeah, I'm guessing they may feel differently. But at least in my opinion, it was the natural evolution of the 40k universe itself that simply outgrew the squat empire. For all the talk of Warhammer Fantasy being about war and chaos invasions, there's still plenty of natural fantasy about it that you can see. Bretonnia has its rolling hills, the High Elves have Ulthuan, the Wood Elves the Forest of Lorien, and the Dwarfs have their glorious strongholds. Okay, the Empire's not exactly lovely, but you get my point. The old world had evolved, with each faction having their own niche place within it. They all felt like they belonged. But the world of 40k truly did evolve into the universe of the grim dark. There is only war. And quite simply, as all the other factions evolved and were developed to grow and fit within this, the squat empire simply couldn't. And if you have any ideas on how it could have, then why not drop it in the comments below? Because honestly, I really don't. I think the 40k lore, and the Imperium for that matter, works much better without it. But admittedly, playing devil's advocate, maybe that is just because I've never been able to see it with a developed squat empire. Who knows, it's a great what if scenario. I'll definitely have to put some thought into it and do an upload sometime. What if the squat empire never got squatted? It's a nice scenario to think about within the lore. How different it could be. But with the past in mind, could the squat empire return? Well, let's be realistic. It is highly unlikely. The Empire could just never be made to fit into the world of 40k. Not through any fault of their own, their concept was just left behind. And when it came time to fix it, the world around them had simply outgrown them. I believe the designers did tinker around with the idea of a revamped squat faction, but it never really got off the ground. However, all hope is never lost, and while we may not get the Empire return as a faction, there has been some pleasant surprises for squat fans over the past couple of years, with some squat bounty hunters released for Necromunda. And I have to admit, these updated aesthetics for the Darwi of the Grim Dark do look pretty good. I certainly can see more releases like this arising in the future. More individual sculpts, single miniature releases, a homage to fans of old. And I wouldn't even be too blown away to maybe see a unit of some kind released for the Astra Militarum. I mean, come on, the range is rumoured to be getting an update next year. A demolition style unit of squats would be a great fit. Or of course the classic artillery unit. It wouldn't even have to be a general unit. You could make it a specific regiment of renown, so to speak. Or more likely a special named character. Again, probably not, but it would be nice to see. But what if? What if the Squat Empire did re-emerge? Is it even possible? Where even was it? Well, here, in obviously a fairly old map dated back from 2nd edition, you can see the Squat homeworlds just past the Maelstrom. And if we were to relate that to the newer, vastly more detailed maps of the galaxy we have now, you can see that a substantial section of the Squat Empire would have been lost with the explosion of the Great Rift. The Maelstrom swelled in size, and the Cicatrix Maledictum engulfed the galaxy. The Squat Empire would have become victim to the hordes of demons pouring out of the madness. The remaining worlds that weren't would be left so close to the Great Rift that their chances of survival wouldn't be much better. Man, the Squats just can't catch a break. First their empire is lunch for the Tyranids, then they're obliterated from existence, and even in a theoretical return, they are engulfed by chaos. You better put that in the Book of Grudges. But hey, if you're a fan of the Squats and long for a return of the Empire, maybe, just maybe, lost within the swirling madness of the Maelstrom, or the engulfing waves of the Cicatrix Maledictum, locked away within a stronghold their old world kin would be proud of, refusing to surrender, the last stronghold of the Squats hold on, denying the gods of the ruinous powers. That's a pretty good scenario to think about. There could be plenty of custom campaigns written and played about that. Or even yet, how about the emergence of a 40k equivalent of the Chaos Dwarfs, the remnants of a Squat Empire engulfed and consumed by the ruinous powers. Now that sounds undoubtedly awesome. But the Squat Empire may be long gone. But maybe, just maybe, in the minds of some, the Squats may yet just survive. But as always guys, what do you think? Leave your thoughts in the comments below, I love to read them. Huge thank you to all my subscribers, your support truly means a lot to me, it really does. And if you're new, please consider subscribing to help the channel grow. And if you enjoyed this particular vid, then why not drop a like on it too. But with that said, I am off, and I'll see you all again real soon.